Lord Gilbert, Baron of England by the grace of His Majesty King Henry II, seized upon the person of a priest of the Holy Church and unlawfully did hold him in custody. Furthermore, in the presence of Lord Gilbert and by his command, his men seized upon this priest when he tried to escape and put him to death. This is the sin of murder and sacrilege. In that Lord Gilbert has rendered no act of contrition or repentance and is at the moment at liberty in the land, we do here and now separate him from the precious body and blood of Christ and from the society of all Christians. We exclude him from our Holy Mother Church and all her sacraments in heaven or on earth. We declare him excommunicate and anathema. We cast him into the outer darkness. We judge him damned with the devil and his fallen angels and all the reprobate to eternal fire and everlasting pain.
Okay, so we just saw the scene from the movie Becket. Most of you probably have not seen that movie. I couldn't find a really great clip of it. But Becket is a movie that was made in the, I would say, the mid-60s. Won a number of awards. Had a number of nominations for the big Oscars and all that stuff. Richard Burton there plays Becket. You'll be learning about the real Becket a little bit. But let me finish up with the papal reform movement and the investiture controversy. One of the reasons why I showed it, I wanted to show you kind of what an excommunication ceremony might have looked like. At least that's the way it's portrayed in that film. And that was an archbishop excommunicating someone. This was the Pope excommunicating Henry. So I think we got to Canossa. So what happened at Canossa? Well, as I told you, Henry, the king of Germany, King Henry IV, had lost to the German nobles. So he makes his way to Italy in order to meet with the Pope. And he meets him at a place called Canossa. Canossa is in Tuscany. I say northern Italy there, because that's where the Pope was actually staying at a mountain castle, I guess we would say. And there was a number of people there, but he was staying there, and Henry comes to the castle, and he doesn't show up as a king. He shows up in sackcloth and ashes, essentially. I don't know if he actually had ashes, but he shows up as a penitent, and he asks the Pope's forgiveness, and he wants to reconcile with the Pope. And he waits around for a couple days, and he finally meets with the Pope, and he is given, Pope hears his confession, I guess we would say, and he's forgiven. The question, though, was the issue of the war and all the other issues that were involved in the problems in Germany and the Holy Roman Empire were not solved. But Henry used that event as a reason to go back to Germany and tell the German nobles, hey, I've reconciled with the Pope. But the Pope didn't necessarily say that. In fact, the Pope was wanting to actually come to Germany and oversee a council in which he would decide over these matters. And Henry didn't want that to happen. So that never happens. The Pope never goes north of the Alps to the German lands. Henry fights the nobles, and by there's kind of I don't know what the right term is, an uneasy peace between the Pope and Henry. And Henry politically is able essentially to hold him off for a couple years. And by the time Gregory realizes what's really happening, at least politically, it's just too late. Because by 1080, Henry has won the war, the Civil War. But the issues of lay investiture and not listening to the Pope and all these things that had been at issue before still existed. And Henry continued to give bishoprics to bishops without the Pope's consent. And that's really what the issue was, for the Pope anyway. So he excommunicated him again. But this time, the political situation had changed. Henry was much stronger. He had beaten the German nobles in a war, and the excommunication did not have the same effect. It didn't have the same result as the first one. So Henry essentially wins this war in 1080, and he's in a more powerful position. So what does he decide to do? Well, eventually he decides to march an army south. He marches an army south through the Alps, and in 1084, Henry comes to Rome and has another man crown him emperor. Okay? I use the term anti-pope there. That's not what the man called himself. Clement III, the man we know as Clement III in this case, would have considered himself the real pope. What happened is Henry and a lot of other bishops who didn't like Gregory declared him deposed, and they elected this other guy, this guy here, Clement III. And that's supposed to be Clement III here. So here's Henry, king. There's Clement III. And here's one of Henry's knights pushing Gregory out of Rome. You see that? So this is actually from a medieval manuscript. I think it's a 12th century manuscript. And it's almost like a cartoon depicting the events. So Henry comes to Rome with an army, installs this new guy as pope, who we consider an anti-pope. What that means is he was never considered the legitimate pope. And Henry's army kicks old Gregory out. See that? Now here's Gregory in exile with his loyal cardinals. That's what happened here. And here is Gregory's funeral. So this would be Gregory's dead body here. So it actually says Gregory VII dies. Okay? So this is a pro-Gregory cartoon. So it's a fascinating cartoon. Now, eventually there is a settlement about these things. It takes another generation to settle this, and it's actually settled by Henry IV's son, Henry V, who was also King of Germany and Holy Roman Emperor. And he settled it with at least 4 popes later. I forgot exactly how many popes there were after that, but that's not important for this class. So he settles it with what's called the Concordat of Worms. So a concordat is a treaty or agreement. Okay, Worms is a place in Germany. Worms is a city in western Germany along the Rhine River that's got a long history connected to the political meetings. There were very significant church and political meetings there for probably a millennia, definitely for hundreds of years. Okay, so just so you know, that's a city in Germany. So this concordat was signed there. So basically what it said is that the Pope would get a say in who the bishops were. The popes would grant the spiritual office to the bishops. But the king would also have a say in who the bishops were. And the king would grant the temporal or earthly office. Okay? So it kind of split the difference. So that's the end of that. Okay, so let's finish up this video with a little bit about medieval England, and this connects to our little clip we saw at the beginning. So here you see William the Conqueror, Duke William at the time, talking to, I think it would be him, Harold Godwinson. And this is from a famous tapestry called the Bayeux Tapestry, okay? This is also from the Bayeux Tapestry here. So Duke William, as I showed you portrayed there in that tapestry, was the Duke of Normandy. Normandy is a territory on the coast of northern France. Okay? You might have heard of Normandy in relation to World War II. The D-Day landing was in the beaches of Normandy. This is way before that, but it's the same area. So this Duke William of Normandy believed that he had been promised to become the King of England. All right? And but another guy was chosen. Again, see, a king's being chosen. Another guy had been chosen by the Anglo-Saxon nobles of England named Harold Godwinson. So that's his name right there, Harold Godwinson. So Duke William decides, he's a very powerful man in northern France there, with a papal blessing at the time, by the way, that he wants to become King of England, and he believes he can press his right by force. So they actually sail across the English Channel, land an army there of knights with their horses and everything, and they fight Harold Godwinson at the Battle of Hastings. It's spelled just like Hastings in Hastings, Nebraska. I'm sure that Hastings, Nebraska was named for the Hastings, England. I'm assuming. I don't know. It might be a person's name. But at that battle, Harold Godwinson is defeated. Not only is he defeated, he dies. And I think this is depicting the battle over here, but I'm not positive. It looks like a battle anyway. So William becomes King of England. This is very significant. William was the last man to successfully invade England from the going across the English Channel there. That's pretty significant. That's why he's known as William the Conqueror. William conquers England. He gives this land to Norman knights. So the Normans were these knights were the men who came over from Normandy with him. He uses the developing feudal ideas that we talked about of oath swearing to make himself a liege lord or lord over England. So he was, and during his lifetime, both King of England and Duke of Normandy. And this all happened, I did not mark it there, but I need to tell you, in 1066. It's a pretty pivotal date, 1066. Right before William's death, he had he ordered a book to be written called the Doomsday Book. And that is spelled that way on purpose. The Doomsday Book was essentially a survey or census of England. It's an important early written source about medieval England in the late 11th century. Okay, it has census data, I guess we would call it today. How accurate it is, it's a different issue, but it is interesting to read parts of it. All right, skipping ahead a little bit on England. So Henry II would have been a descendant of William. So William creates an entire dynasty, right? And this dynasty controls England for quite a long time. And Henry II would have been, let's see, I think William's great grandson. It might be grandson, but I don't remember offhand. But that's fine. He was in the line of William, and Henry brought together really almost like a French territory and English empire of his own. And I'll kind of show you what I'm talking about here for a second. He married, and in addition to that, he ended up marrying this woman, Eleanor of Aquitaine. So this is supposed to be Henry and Eleanor over here. Now, we're going to hear about Eleanor of Aquitaine, or if you might have already heard about Eleanor of Aquitaine in the context of the Crusades. And so we'll hear about her in another context too, but just remember that. She had been married before to another king, pretty significant woman. So I was telling you, he kind of had his own little empire here. And let's end with this whole thing with Thomas Becket. Thomas Becket had been Henry's chancellor. You see right here, he had been Henry's chancellor. Henry got him to be made Archbishop of Canterbury, as portrayed in the film there. After Thomas became Archbishop of Canterbury, he and Henry had a falling out. There was a contest of power over control. See, he wanted to increase royal control, over control of church courts and the church itself. And Thomas resisted him. There's Henry's empire. There's Henry and Thomas arguing. There's Thomas Becket being murdered. So, he was murdered on December 29th, 1170.